You know, there's something I'm rather curious about. What would happen if we went back over this way and tried playing around with the stuff over here? Nothing. Well, that's rather curious. So not only can we not affect anything on the puzzle panel up there, where we raise the platform, but we also can't play around with the variables we can manipulate down here. Interesting. So I wonder why Atris would make it that way. And in case you're wondering, the same is actually true for the balance beam puzzle as well. If you were to try to go into the weight room, which is the only place that you can affect anything outside of the puzzle panel, then you couldn't even get inside as the door would be locked. Thankfully, there is one place that we can go to right over here, and that is these hexagon towers. I gotta admit, I love the way these things look in the sunset light. Golden hour is amazing, isn't it? And hey, at least these things aren't filled with that green acid stuff, like the balance beam puzzle had. Alright, so our ultimate objective is to get in there. We can find a way in, that is. Oh, here we go. That's a nifty little latch thing. And wow, check out all these mossy columns ringing the area. Yeah, we know the drill. Is it just me, or is that thing closer to the ground than like all the other ones? And one thing's for sure, this thing raised us way higher than the other platforms did. But what in the world is this thing anyway? Well, we've got these circular things with holes. We got 3 pegs that we can plug into holes. And we got this little lever here. Let's just try pulling this and just see what happens. Okay, we know what to expect here. A ball gets raised. Or gets created when that thing's raised, I should say. And this thing just spins around. Oh. Well, that's a bummer. Somehow that thing melted our ball. Okay, let's try using these pegs now. I'll just put them in some random spots and we'll see what happens. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm just going to throw them into places for fun. Why don't we do that? Oh. Well, that did not end too well, but it gave us a few things to work with here. Let's just study what we've just learned. Okay, so first of all, the pegs cause the ball to spring from wherever they are when they fall to the bottom area here on the wheel. So whenever a peg gets to this slot, then the ball bounces, or goes over and switches tracks, I should say. Or in the case where it was all the way out here, it tried to, but there was no track, so it just smashed up there. Well, that's not good. So where ultimately are we trying to get the ball to go to? That's the question of the hour. Well, let's just trace where it comes in. The cupola, I cannot say that word properly, creates the ball, it comes down this track, goes along here, and you can't really see it too well, but the track ends right here. There's these 2 little prongs you can see right there, and it transfers over into this slot. Okay, so things start out over here. Ultimately, we want to get the ball onto this spot here, where this track goes and leads back to the pagoda. Well, that shouldn't be too hard. All we need to do is just transfer the ball onto this track, right? We start over here, and this thing goes counterclockwise, while this thing goes clockwise. It kind of went fast, so you may not have noticed that, but that's important to note. So we just need to count here. 1, 2. Alright, so we just need to put a peg 2 spaces from the starting points. 1, 2, oh. Well, unfortunately, it looks like that solution is going to be rather impossible, because somebody has plugged up that spot with something that's going to make this puzzle impossible to do using that method. And I think we know who that someone is. So we have to come up with a different and more complex solution. So the problem now becomes that we can't really get the ball into this slot when it's over here, because we can only bounce the ball off these pads. We can only cause a ball to fall through here. So in other words, we're going to have to use 3 pegs, all 3 of these things, to make the ball do our bidding. Well, let's try something here. We can find out what we can do just based on the choices we have. We know that we can't get the ball all the way out here and launch it, because that's just going to launch it right up here and smash it. So really, we've got only 3 choices that we can pick when it comes to where we want the ball to launch that actually involve a track. However, we can actually narrow this down to 2 choices, because one of these choices we can't even do. So it's either this one or this one, because this one is out. So this one leads right here into this spot, and this one over here leads into this spot. So that's good news. At least we can actually play around with this, such that we won't really fall into the ocean or anything. Speaking of which, let's see what happens when we do that. Let's use this first one, and it would launch over here. And let's just see what happens when we launch it using the next one over. So let's just count 1 going the other way over this way, which is counterclockwise since this one goes clockwise. And see what happens. Yeah, it definitely fell into the ocean, but at least that confirms that we need to actually make it fall through a hole in order to get back onto the track over here. Okay, so and also that confirms that we need to make sure that we don't leave this thing spinning around such that this is covered up. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. If we were to just launch this from this spot, we would go over here. So we cannot use this spot, but we can use this one. We can go 2 spaces over. So that's good news. And it would also make sure that we didn't leave this covered up, because if we use this spot over here to launch the ball back to this side, this would be covered up, so that's not going to work. So in other words, we absolutely have to use this one if we were to go over here. So if we come back this way, there's actually a little bit of a problem over here, because we would need to go a full 5 spaces in order to get back to this slot, because this goes counterclockwise. But we don't have 5 spaces because we've already rotated this thing 1 slot, and there's only 4 more slots left before it gets back down to the original position and disintegrates the poor thing. So, pretty much anything involving using this first peg is out, which means that we're limited to using the 3rd slot over here. So if we were to do this, we're actually in a much better position because we start this one ahead of the rotation. And as a result, we don't actually have to move that many spaces in order to get back over this way. The other upside to doing it this way is that we can actually launch the ball through this slot right here. Because remember, if you were to do that using this side, then you would have to make a full rotation before you got all the way back around, and that's impossible without full disintegration. But if you were to land over here first, you can then just travel 4 spaces in order to get back down here. And as a result of landing in this spot, then you would need only 1 more space to get back to where you need to be. So that's pretty much the logic you need to use to solve this. But before we do it for real, there's actually one more thing I wanted to try for fun. We noted earlier that the ball came through this track before it started spinning around and doing all of the stuff over here. But what happens if we were to actually take it back onto this track? After all, it is possible to launch a ball from this spot all the way down through here. So let's see what happens if we do that. I'm actually going to use this way. I think we would have to do it this way for it to really work. We would go over here. We could then do another couple like this, because this spot would have a pad in it, so we would be safe. And then we would take 3 more spots before it fell down through the track over here after being launched out of here. So let's see what happens if we do that. Oh, looks like Atris installed a security countermeasure there to make sure the ball just didn't get stuck here forever. There's a little pike or something down here on the track that smashes it when it goes this direction. Kind of like one of those tire damage things that prevents you from going a certain way, but don't do any damage when you go through it the other way. Alright, we know how to do this now. So let's count one final time so you guys can see how this works. We would go 3 spaces counterclockwise, so 1, 2, 3. Because remember, we're working backwards. So in other words, it would have rotated down here by that point. Then we launch the ball over here, where we would need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, which is right there. We're working backwards counterclockwise since this one is going clockwise. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go back over here and we just need to do one more, which is the spot adjacent to where we place the first peg. Alright, fingers crossed. Success! We did it! I really hope my explanation of that was not too difficult to follow. I know I'm really bad at explaining those sorts of things. Alright, we got that final piece of the bridge raised and lowered, although we still don't understand the significance of that. And once again, we get a code here once more. Alright, well, we're done with this now. So, let's go ahead. Oh. Well, as usual, there's a set of journal pages by the puzzle here, so let's read these. The memories flood over me too fast. They race around inside my head, filling my soul with despair. And the more I think about how nothing can be done, how no one can be alive outside his shield, the faster the fog rushes in. I can lose myself in the fog. When it's thick enough, I can let go and be safe. I can start to forget. But I must not forget. I must remember every lie they told my people. How they manipulated us to all get what they wanted. They told me they had come to fix my world. They asked me to arrange a meeting with the elders. The books they carried in with them showed other worlds. Beautiful places where people didn't have to work so hard to survive. They told my people that Atris had written these books, that he had written Orion, but that he'd made our world unstable. They said he wanted to make us slaves to the tree. They asked me, "Don't you remember, Savidro? Our father wrote this world to teach us, to show his sons what an age shouldn't be." I don't know what to say. I don't know how it could be true. But why would they lie? Why would Atris have lied? The worlds they showed us in those books. The elders refuse to believe them. They say we cannot abandon the tree. For thousands of years, we have tended the lattice roots. Without our traditions, we will die. I don't want us to die. I don't. But Cirrus and Aganar said they would come back, Savidro. Just like Atris once said to you as well. He said he would come back, but then he didn't. He didn't. And for that, you will have to make him pay. Let's shed some new light on the situation. So not only did Cirrus and Aganar manipulate the Narayan people into a civil war, but we can also see here that they've convinced Savidro and the rest of the people of Narayan that the age was written to be a terrible example. That's not cool. Oh, and over here we can see that big sword here as well. That's cool. More of these crystals. Quite pretty. This looks like a rather flimsy rope ladder, but thankfully it's not long. And we're back in familiar territory. We just made a whole circle around the island. And we are now ready to input the 3 codes into the 3 podiums here.